It's always this long as it goes on. Good evening and welcome along to the forum. This is the forum, a veritable coliseum of Liverpool topics which are eating up your mind. With this week's Anfield agenda, we put a two-footed challenge into an Anfield index of topics, picking up all your Redmen chats on TV tonight. Right, that's an Anfield wrap. On the opening, I'm your forum admin, Phil Casey, and joining me in the chat room is forumtologists Andy Young. Ray Dickinson, and then all the way live and from the man who knows football the best from Spain, knows about Spanish lockdowns and Barcelona's number one fan. It is, of course, Peter Smith. And also, we're welcoming back in Periscope tonight. We're doing it especially because I am a huge Periscope fan and I insisted on being up on Periscope tonight. Yes, Pete, this is like one of those Brady Bunch things. I have to go. We can all do a thing at the end of it. Hi, Grizz. How are you keeping? It's great to see everyone all along for the chats. Anthony Flynn, Nipsey Russell, Max Okens, the whole lot. Remember to sanitize and all that type of stuff. Right, getting on with this. First question I wanted to ask, lads. Normally we would do 4 topics, but I want to do a bit of an icebreaker for people who aren't used to us because they're all newbies and they're all born in the year 2020. But this first question I want to have is, what is the weirdest combination with chips that you've ever come across in your life? Let me start with you, Peter Smith. What is your weirdest combination that you've ever heard of with chips?
Living in Spain, prawns. I mean, why? Why would you do it? You know, you see them here, you know, everything here is patatas fritas or patatas bravas, and I'll also have a side order of, you know, gooey prawns. What is that about? So that's
gooey
weird.
Prawns
for me, that's
chips.
Weird. Yeah,
Right.
it's just weird.
It's
weird.
Ray Dicko Dickinson, you come from England, and the English do like have the weird stuff with the chips. So what's your weirdest combination with chips you've ever come across in life?
I don't know. I think pasta and chips is pretty weird. I served that up to the little one the other day. Pasta and chips. A
lot of carbs.
Didn't really work, did it?
Lots of carbs.
The only thing, strangely enough, though, if you go into a pub when they were open, and you could go into a pub, lasagna and chips is quite often served, which is essentially pasta and chips when you think about it.
Chips is essential with lasagna. Chips is essential with lasagna.
Andy, what's your weirdest combination with chips that you've come across?
Mayonnaise.
Never been to Holland, no.
No, mayonnaise and chips is wrong.
Mayonnaise and chips.
Yeah.
No. All right. The weirdest combination I've ever come across was oxtail soup and chips. It was definitely the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. We were in a pub in Wexford and this fella ordered just like soupy chips and it was just off the chart mental. So he was just sitting there, a bowl of oxtail soup, chips on the side, dipping the chips into the oxtail soup because he said it was better than gravy. Don't know. Strangest one I've
back
come
to 1988 there with the oxtail reference. What's that about? I don't think anyone, you know what I mean?
I know, yeah, like it is the weirdest thing. Soup and chips. Imagine had spaghetti and chips. No, hang on, that's just
the whole pasta thing. Yeah,
creamy rice. Anthony Flynn says creamy rice and chips. What? Right, that's just bizarre.
Ambrosia. That sounds like a pregnancy nightmare.
Yeah, that's just bizarre things. Right, anyway, lads, look, for anyone joining us, and this is the first night joining us, particularly if you're on Periscope, we didn't do it live on Periscope last week. The idea of the forum is that we get away from the direct micro of what's going on with Liverpool Football Club and look at the bigger, broader topics that have popped up across the course of the week. What we're going to be doing is asking you guys from next week on to give us one topic, and we'll also have a couple of pre-arranged topics where we've made up our answers to it beforehand. But tonight we're going to kick off, and I think this was Andy's choice of topic. So Andy, why don't you introduce what your topic is and what your feelings is about your topic while I take a rest.
Yeah, my one was just basically, where does Jurgen Klopp stand in the all-time greats? It's probably does a disservice to what like the likes of Shanks and Paisley to say he's above them, but he's in that conversation now. I just see a lot of talk on social media about it. I just think it's worth chatting about. For me, I kind of liken him to the Shanks in the same way as, okay, Shanks established the club as such, created what we know today, a lot of standards and the togetherness with the fans. But we lost our way for so long. and what Klopp has done to reconnect everyone, I think has been equally important in when you look at our history and what we are now. Obviously, a lot of trophies have to come to be up there with Bob. But yeah, I just thought I'd see what the rest of you thought on that one.
Ray, you're a Scouser. What's your thoughts, given that you've seen many a manager come down through the years? And like, obviously Andy's talking about Klopp, but we've also had Houllier, and we've had Evans, and we've had Souness, and we've had Hodgson, and we had Douglas the second time around, and we've had Rodgers, as well as all the other lads that Andy mentioned. So where for you does Klopp stand at the moment?
I think obviously by winning the league and breaking that kind of 30-year sort of curse, he's already sort of gone down in folklore. He's a few more years, I guess, to be at the club, and we get, he's won a European Cup, he's won a league. I guess it depends how sustainable this is over the next sort of like 3 to 5 years. Chris Brack there is saying behind Shanks, Paisley and Dalglish at the moment. I think that's pretty much spot on. I mean, absolute sort of legends, and I think probably when we're 20 years on, we might be thinking that about Klopp as well. But I mean, like, Brendan Rodgers would have put himself down in folklore if he'd have broken that. Well, he would have. Let's face it. Whoever came in and won that league was always going to be kind of put up there on a pedestal. So, look, he's like, we love him. The thing that he's done, which you could never necessarily have predicted, is, going back to those kind of days where he really kind of got the club, and probably the first time anyone really did, arguably since the likes of Dalglish in a way, because what Houllier and Benitez did was come and brought their own kind of, put their own stamp on the club. But Klopp's managed to do this whilst also linking it to our past, which is probably been the most amazing accomplishment so far, really.
Pete?
I think for me, to be honest, I mean, Bracky is a great show from Bracky to put him, fourth behind the great lads. But for me, to be a complete outsider, which Jurgen Klopp was, coming in from, Germany, the fact that the lads were am I on mute because everybody's laughing? Or you're looking
at the comments, looking at
it's comments. No, for them to be, because usually when you're on mute, no, he's come in completely from the outside, and considering where we were, and the state that we were in, what he inherited. If you look at his first 11, it was an absolute shambles. Whereas, there's no question in my mind, Shankly's the all-time greatest. He took us from absolutely nothing and nowhere. Probably obviously followed by Paisley, as Bracky says, and then Dalglish, picking up from the greats. But for me, you've got to throw Jurgen into the mix in amongst them somewhere. I don't know, certainly not 1 or 2, but certainly maybe 3 or 4, maybe 3, considering, he's come in from the complete cold. Having not, knew nothing about really the UK, knew nothing about Liverpool, knew very little about, the culture, and just seemed to put his finger on the pulse very, very quickly. And a lot of people think a lot of the decisions he makes and a lot of the things that he says, it seems to be in step with not just football wise, but with the values that people seem to have, on Merseyside. So for me, he's definitely certainly up there near the top branch.
This chat is full of burners tonight, isn't it?
I have to say, I don't know how anyone could not have Klopp at least in the top 3. And I think Shankly's overrated as well, to be totally honest with you, right? I think, like, when you look at it, what Bob Paisley did, like, Bob Paisley for me is the greatest Liverpool manager of all time. With the number of trophies he's won, what he did, what he achieved. I know Shankly sets the whole thing up, but Paisley is the man who delivered more than any other Liverpool manager, and he's the one for me that's at the top of the 3. So when I'm looking at that, then I'm looking at, right, you've got Kenny in his spell as player manager, right? Because the second spell was an absolute disaster. It was worse than Hodgson, let's be honest about it, right there. And then you've got Bill Shankly himself. So after that, there's nobody comes close to them, right? So like Rafa, this talk about Rafa and all, there's always excuses for Rafa. We love making an excuse for Rafa. That's because we liked Rafa. He was a messianic manager. He said the right things. He did the right things. He won a European Cup. But he doesn't get close. He's not there with Klopp. Klopp takes us the same amount of Champions League finals, and he's won a league. That straight away puts him above Rafa any day of the week. So it means, like, you look at it when it comes to, Kenny didn't win the Champions League, didn't win the European Cup, and I know it was circumstance that dictated that. But at the same time, you've got that piece that Klopp has managed to do: two Champions League finals, one Champions League win, and the Europa League final, plus runners up in the league, and he's won a league title. If Klopp wins another league title or another Champions League, then he's definitely in the top three, and it's just a case of what your own personal preference is. Like, I look at what Klopp has done, has been to take a club that was failing miserably and disappearing back into oblivion, and turned it around to become literally the most dominant team this league has ever seen. And that's something, given the type of methodology that we now use. When Kenny was manager, we were the biggest spenders in England, and we were the top of the tree. When Bob was there, we were the biggest spenders in England and the top of the tree. We're not the biggest spenders in England anymore, and we are top of the tree.
Top 5, yeah.
Yeah, so you cannot underestimate what Klopp has managed to achieve. And even Rafa spent an awful lot of money, even though it was all debt that was being put on the club. He did spend an awful lot of money in comparison. Klopp has been asked to manage this, and also give credit to Michael Edwards here. It's the whole team that sits there at the moment is arguably better than any other stage in the club in terms of a total team from top to bottom. So to me, it's definitely in there. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, well, look, one of the biggest things Klopp has done for me is, like, it's been a bit of a rebirth for football. Like, you know, when players like Suarez left and Torres left on, even going back that far, you felt like there was no kind of connection with the club. The players had no connection with the club. But Klopp has managed to find this balance between the modern day footballer and the fan. Somehow he's been able to triangulate all of those things, what the FSG business model is, how modern sport is, how competitive it is, and how much money it is. But he's still made it so big for the fans again. And the fans feel connected to the players again, and the players feel connected to the fans. That's for me has been a bit of a rebirth, and that's why I kind of that's why I put him up there with Shanks in that way.
Yeah, I think, Andy, what you're touching on there is the fact that he's made us as Liverpool fans enjoy, you know, watching the team again, and everything sort of connected with being a Liverpool fan. You know, there's so many years where being a Liverpool fan was a bit of a sort of labour of love, really. You know what I mean? You know, your loyalties made sure that you were watching every week, and, you know, you didn't lose interest from that point of view. Or maybe some fans did, but what he's done now is he's got us all completely invested. You know, he's got fellas like myself who wouldn't have bought a kit for years suddenly to go out and buy a few kits. Do you know what I mean? Like, the little things like this. I mean, it's a real shame at the moment, like, that we can't actually go and watch this team play, because, like, I'm just dying to go back and watch us play. And for years I would go the match, you know, every other week, sometimes a couple of times a week, depending on how the fixtures felt. And, like, it felt like a chore at times going to watch the team, do you know, that way. And it's just not like that at all. You know, lately, every time I've gone to Anfield, it's just been a buzz going there. And, you know, a big part of that is down to Klopp and what he's brought back to the club. Really is.
Yeah, big time.
Right, lads. What then cements him into the top position? I'll take it on.
Trophies.
How many?
I think. Well, okay. What did Paisley have? 13 major trophies, 9 seasons, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to do that because of the gap in success. You know, Paisley inherited a good team, inherited a good setup, and what Klopp has had to do in the modern day competitive sports, you know, with City there, with everyone, all the money. I don't think he has to win 13 trophies, but I think if he doubled what he has so far, he's up there straight away.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ray, for you?
I think if he wins 3 leagues out of 5 and maybe another European Cup, then he's definitely elevating himself into the top 2, top 3, with everything else that goes on alongside in terms of the kind of the rebuild or the reboot or whatever you want to call it over the last few years. So yeah, 3 out of 5, considering he's, as Keith's mentioned there in the chat, considering what he's up against from a Man City point of view, and the points haul as well. You know what I mean? Like the amount of points that, if we're consistently sort of getting over 90 points a season for like 5 seasons on the bounce, like that would be some effort.
Well, then let me throw the converse of this, right? In 20 years' time, people won't remember the football. They won't think about the way the football was played or how we got there. It will all be about the trophies. And with that, you look at Paisley. He does 19 in 9 years, right? Mm. The reason why Shankly is thought of is because he built the club from the scratch.
Yeah.
And what Klopp will always be remembered for is winning that first league title again as Liverpool manager, right? If he goes and wins 3 league titles in the next 5 years, then he puts himself into the conversation to pass Kenny Dalglish. But I don't think anyone ever passes either Shankly or Paisley, given what they did and what they created. Yeah, I know people are getting annoyed with me saying that I thought that Shankly's overrated, but I just think when you look at Paisley, I don't really care. When you look
it's all the lads who don't know who you are. Phil, tell them who you are.
No, they'll get to know. When I look at Bill Paisley's record, it's just literally the best you're going to ever get out of a Liverpool manager. I don't think you're ever going to see another Liverpool manager win 19 trophies in 9 years. I think it's near impossible.
Yeah.
In this day and age, in this football, I think, and the only thing, and that possibly goes for Klopp in terms of what his legacy has been, if he can win 8 or 9 trophies in the time he's here as a Liverpool manager, and that's saying putting 6 on the board before he leaves, right, from where he stands at this moment in time, that is a huge, huge, huge trophy haul for a manager in this day and age that isn't Pep Guardiola, who isn't financially doping at every club that he goes to.
Stefan has your back anyway, Phil. He says you misspoke.
All right, sorry.
Apologise to Wayne and the other fella.
Absolutely, will never apologise. I will never apologise to anyone on the internet. It's that simple. They don't.
The lads are there. Right. Look, they're having the crack.
Yeah, they're having the crack. They're great lads. All great lads there floating around. So anyway, come here to me, right? Look, leading on from that, and I think it's a good way to move into this. We'll get on to transfers and stuff in a second. But on that take, given that we were hated as a club for the best part of 30 years because of our relentless winning that was going on and dominating England, is there a growing sense now of this ABL, anyone but Liverpool, because of the way we're playing and because of who we are and because of what we're doing to the league? Like, there was an arrogance in that win at the weekend, but there's an arrogance in how we've played now for the best part of 9 months that we literally just take the piss when we go ahead and we're not like City are constantly trying to prove that they're Billy Big Balls and they're floating around and doing whatever they want, right? And still nobody takes them serious. Whereas we go 1-0, 2-0, and it's just like, right, now we've just managed the games out, and it's starting to really piss people off, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose when there was obviously that period there where, a good few people, opposing fans, were quite willing to sort of let us finally win this league. Obviously, the United fans being the notable exception, but outside of United fans, I think there wasn't a lot sort of that sort of negativity left, I suppose. But now that we have kind of climbed to the peak and the success is kind of looks like it's sustainable for a number of years, then yeah, people are taking pot shots left, right, and centre. I guess there's obviously the jealousy factor there, and the penalty pool thing kind of died down. But you're going to get all of this again. You're going to get kind of VAR. Liverpool winning it by this way or that way. I just think it's an underlying jealousy that's bubbled to the surface as probably quickly than maybe we would have thought, but it's out there for all to see now. And look, that just goes with the territory of being successful. It actually amuses me, and if you look around Twitter, it certainly amuses a lot of other Liverpool fans, especially people who can remember what it was like to be, have that target on your back when we were winning everything in the sort of 80s and well, not quite beyond the 80s, but in the 80s,
Pete, this was your shout, so What's driving this? Because you go on and you literally just annoy lots of people online. It's great crack watching you and reading your timeline. So, well, go on.
I love it because we're all similar age and we're old enough to remember when football was 90 minutes, and at the end of the 90 minutes, somebody handed Alan Hansen a trophy, and that's what it was. So for me, I think you look back then. There's a lot of fellas online now, or there's a lot of fellas in general out there, supporters of Manchester United, whatever, rivals, and they grew up, as little kids, same as us, looking at that and having to be force-fed that. So then, they get a little bit older and all of a sudden their club is, Manchester United are cleaning up left, right and centre. And the joke continues, no matter what happens between, if they're going for the league against Arsenal or if they're going for the league against Chelsea, if they don't win it, success then becomes, well, at least Liverpool are in the shit again. So all of a sudden, this has completely changed, and people talk about the unbearables and Liverpool fans being unbearable. It's not that Liverpool fans are unbearable. What's unbearable for them is not having Liverpool as a punch bag anymore. I keep saying it, and I'll always say it. What kills them is the idea of not being able to sit with their mates and say, well, us, Chelsea, whatever, Manchester United, we've had a shit season, but look at Liverpool, ha. They thought that this would last forever. It's like us as kids. I honestly grew up thinking it's a little bit like WWF wrestling at the time. I thought, the game went on and Liverpool just won because those are the rules, and that's part of why I fell in love with them. So I thought that would go on forever, and they thought in turn that Manchester United would dominate forever. And I'm sure some of the Chelsea nitwits thought that they dominate forever. And all of a sudden, the butt of the eternal 30-year joke has turned around, and not only turned around, for one season, it looks like it's a sustainable business model, and by the way, they just keep coming. And now the new joke is, not content with winning, Klopp is tweaking things to find another way to be brilliant and bringing in another style of brilliance, and that's killing people. I mean, a player like Thiago, for example, at the absolute peak of his abilities, chooses, everybody was going, oh, we're speaking to his agents, but all the signal was, listen, I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to play for Liverpool. It's going to happen. And I think that really pissed people off to the extent where they really thought that, City we'll get Messi in, United where we'll get Jadon Sancho in. And all of a sudden, one of the top, highest achieving midfield players in the world has blanked a 4-year contract of the European champions to, basically tell the world, I want to play for Liverpool, not interested in even talking to anyone else. That is where Liverpool are now, and it's pissing people off. It's great. I'm loving it.
And Andy, because you're the toppest red and top red man.
Oh yeah, absolute top red, super fan.
I didn't even know you had a black top. I thought every top you had in your house was a red top because you're such a top red.
It's a lovely top, isn't it? It is lovely.
This is a vapor as well. I only got vapor. Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm loving the heat. There's hours of entertainment on social media if you want it. If you have an hour to kill, if you're on a bus, in a train, go on there and just drag them all in and then just log off, and then you come back and your notifications are lit up. It's great crack. I think the media thing is a lot to do with how feisty Liverpool fans are on social media. The likes of TalkSport only have to throw out a little hook themselves and they get clicks everywhere. And Sky are at it now because they know they generate so much interaction on social media. Any poll you see, it's always dominated, no matter who they put in. You could put Origi into the player of the season, the Liverpool fans will landslide for him. You know what I mean? it's just the presence that Liverpool fans have are so busy on social media that the media are playing up to it. And then what happens is opposition fans listen to the media and they believe all these little hooks that are out there. Before the Chelsea game, there was podcast up, you see it all over the shop now. Today, fans from Chelsea, Arsenal, United, all saying that Liverpool will finish third and fourth, and they have this rationale built up in their head that all came from the media. It couldn't have come from their own head. It's so stupid. If anyone watches Liverpool, they're not finishing third or fourth. Well, if you say they're going to finish third or fourth, you're mad. It could happen, but you're absolutely bonkers to suggest so. As I said, I'm absolutely loving it. And long may it last, because it creates a togetherness in a team as well. And when that existed for United all them years ago, when they were successful, they had it too. They fought for each other. And that's what we want. We want this to last.
I personally, I think this is both a symptom and a result of our previous dominance, which lasted the best part of 30 years, right? And it's always been sitting there. So when all these fellas were kids and their dads were supporting those teams that they support now, right? They hated Liverpool. Absolutely despised it, right? And they've grown up without that hate of Liverpool there, because Liverpool weren't challenging for league titles. So we occasionally came along. We had 95, 96 under Evans when we were in the running for the league title and blew it with about 6 games to go. You've got the title run under Rafa in 08, 09, and you could see how much the media did not want us to win that league title. Do you remember the Rafa rant, which we ended up winning more games than we'd ever done before before he has the Rafa rant? You go 13, 14, and we don't let it slip comment. Like, they were baiting that comment before that ever that happened at Chelsea, because they zoomed in with the mic, they picked up on Gerrard saying it. They didn't want Gerrard to win a league, and it's been there. And going back to Andy, that festers and it fosters those viewpoints that have been sitting there for the best part of 25 years. The fear in that these teams had of Liverpool coming back and exerting a dominance like they had for the previous 30 years, particularly the United side, because the United fans' biggest fear has always been to have Ferguson in the corner, and the biggest fear they had was what happens after Alex Ferguson goes. So not only have they had to deal with Manchester City suddenly appearing and dominating football, now the team that they hate with all their passion is the one that looks like they're sitting on a period of 3 to 5 years of where they're just going to either win league titles or dominate Europe. And this is blowing their minds. Like, their answer, and I love it because it's Chelsea's answer and it's United's answer to everything, is throw loads of money at this and then be able to turn around and say, haha, look, Liverpool can't spend money. In the same breath, we've gone out and spent nearly 100 million on players this summer, right? I think we've recouped about 20 million. Like, we play it brilliantly. We've played it brilliantly. We play the transfer market brilliantly, and that pisses them off. You look at United. The United fans are cracking up because they've agreed terms with Sancho, Thiago, Werner, Koulibaly, Upamecano, Bellingham, the fella who went to Dortmund. Every single player that's gone somewhere. Who was your man? Sanguilangi, Regulian, the fella who turns up at Spurs. Yeah. Did agree terms with them. It's literally, there's Arsene Wenger. Even he knows.
He knows. He knows this game.
But the fact that we're now the biggest club in England, not just because we say we're the biggest club in England, it's that we have this global presence again, right? And the focus of all the press attention that's outside of England is on Liverpool from around the rest of the world, and that's down their heads in. Like, the Arsenal fans built a trophy to celebrate that they sold more home jerseys in England than we did. Like, they were celebrating that last week, right? This week it turned out that Nike can't even order stock anymore. All the coronavirus has taken away all the material. There won't be any jerseys for the best part of 8 months at this stage now for the rest of the world.
Yeah, Phil, come on, you Spurs there. Says Klopp has created a panic in other clubs, and I think he's spot on. Liverpool's signings and their business in the market is so strategic. It's about sustaining success. It's so measured. Everybody else that signs players, it is a panic. Look at Chelsea, like, they've signed Havertz and they've signed Werner, and they don't know what to do with them. And they won't know what to do with them. Lampard won't know what to do with them. I honestly feel that Lampard won't last the season.
Mate, he doesn't even know what to do with N'Golo Kante. I mean, This is a guy who single-handedly practically won Leicester a title playing defensive midfield. I mean, I'm looking at Frank Lampard thinking, I expected more.
And Leicester.
Yeah, at Leicester. It's
incredible. Fucking Alexa, it's incredible. Here.
But anyway,
going off because I said Leicester.
Even the way City do their business, it is panic. It's panic buying. Bringing in Ake, desperate for a centre half. Just get that fella who plays well in the Premier League. Like, it's not as measured. It's not as measured as Klopp and his team in their bunker. It's incredible how they go about their business and how measured it is. And when you see all of our fans piling in, giving out about no signs, it really does piss me off because honestly, you couldn't have lived through the bad times if you think this is worth your anger these days. This is the best you'll ever have. This is the best you'll ever experience. Trust this fucking team. Yeah. Trust this manager. Trust everyone he's put around him. Look at the squad we have now. Look at the 11 we have. It's unbelievable.
It's also right. Look, you look at it and you say it's the panic thing is the best show I've heard, Andy. That's well done. You deserve a gold star for that show. It has created panic. Yeah. It's like you look at City and they spent €1 billion on Pep Guardiola. They spent €1 billion on all the players, right? Chelsea have gone out and spent €400 billion on Kepa alone, and the fella can't even play in goal. They bought his brother, not the goalkeeping fella. United have spent €100 billion in the last 10 weeks and haven't signed a single player. Arsenal have signed loads of fellas that nobody's ever heard of, and they're convinced they're going to win the league. And Spurs have got Scatman Joe managing at the moment, doing boppity boo, right? So it's like you look at it and you say to yourself, there's a reason why they hate us, because no matter what plan and no matter what they do and what they try to do, they can't match us. They don't know how to match us. They don't know how it's going to be, how they're going to do it. And every one of them are looking at it going, why didn't we get Klopp? That's the fundamental thing is, look, Fat Frank, they're trying to play him up and they're saying, why did we not get Klopp? United are looking and saying, do you remember we had a chance to get Klopp and we decided not to go for it? There's the whole thing. Chelsea, they signed every manager bar Klopp ever at one stage, and then City were convinced that Guardiola had the golden goose and had the golden thing to go there. So it's just it's a big pile of hate, and long may it continue. I would love us to be the most hated English team in England for the next 20 years, because that means that we have relentlessly won everything non-stop.
Yeah, I think the thing about United as well is it is history repeating, isn't it? We when we fall off the cliff in the early 90s, that's when the resurgence begins and they go on to dominate, and it's just completely mirroring. And we go from one bad decision to another. Then for years we keep signing the next bit, the next big thing and whatnot. Really reaching for big signings, splash signings, and this is what our rivals are now doing, and you can see United panicking and going and spending that money on Sancho when that's not necessarily the answer to all the problems. It'll just be a diversion.
But right,
unless he can play centre half.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Peter. Just that comment there. Andy's put up what's behind the scenes. Some former LFC players buying into the agenda built up by rival fans. Didi saying, Murphy saying players unhappy. Danny Murphy. Danny Murphy is still bitter over being sold by Rafa as soon as he came in the door, right? So ignore Danny Murphy. You may as well listen to Danny Mills. And if you're listening to Danny Mills, then you've probably got coronavirus and you need to get yourself.
And you're watching TalkSport, right? Exactly.
Yeah, he's exactly, in he's gone to the Tony Evans school of bitterness, hasn't he? Really, Danny Murphy.
He invented the school of bitterness, right? Didi is mad. Like, we all know that. He just says things to be relevant, because he doesn't seem to be getting many gigs that much on the television. Like the ones I pay attention to is none, because basically, with the exception of maybe, I actually think Gary Neville's commentary on Liverpool is probably the most balanced, and he has the least.
It's not now.
That's because his head's
gone mad. Hammering his own club.
Do you know what? He could live with us for a season. You know what I mean? And he made a bit of a joke of how he's going to be pissed off us winning the league. He wants City to win the league over Liverpool.
Yeah, the season before last was perfect for Neville. Yeah. We were great and we lost out on the league by 1 point. That was, that gave him the platform to be able to kind of wax lyrical about Liverpool, but us not win the league. That's what he wanted. That's kind of what he wanted. I think us winning the league last season would have tipped him over the edge.
The best out there is seeing us by a mile.
Yeah, Andy, I was going to say, I tell you, and it's probably the years of regret. I've seen it. I don't know if any of you seen that interview where he actually basically sat down. He was nearly in tears, the guy, talking about his own regrets about the 1990s. Just for that moment, it was just like, oh my God. we all know what he did, but it was what he was trying to do, that failed. It wasn't that he was trying to sabotage the club. He just had his own way, like what he did with Rangers. But for me, yeah, I agree with you, Andy. Soon as maybe it's the years of hot and cold and losing the head, and he just has this very unique perspective.
But look,
I don't know.
No, again, look, you got to take pundits with a pinch of salt. They're basically clickbait now at this stage to try to get it, and very few actually get to say what they want to say. But look, at the same time, for the best part of 20 years, when we weren't winning trophies, most of the media were ex-Liverpool players. We're now into a phase where, because we hadn't won anything for 20 years, most of the pundits are not going to be Liverpool players. Look at the amount of United players. Yeah. Or Arsenal, or Blackburn, or Chelsea. Like, they're all going to wander in. Excuse me, you get the few odd ones and thing. Stefan is talking about Kenny Cunningham. I wouldn't even pay attention to Kenny Cunningham. If you're
he's an accountant. Kenny Cunningham's an accountant to fucking Egypt. I mean, some of the things it's almost like we all know that he hates Liverpool. It's obvious. He just he's like that contrary L1, that your mother comes home and complains about. If everyone says the sky is blue, Ken Cunningham has to say that it's fucking green. Do you know what I mean? He's just one of them.
Kenny Cunningham watches as much football as I do, and that's zero. Honestly, he pays as much attention
with his accountancy practice. Yeah,
like, he literally, when he's commentating on European games, he opens Wikipedia, reads what's in there about the team, and then just says it. Right. So if you want to know, if you want to do something to Kenny Cunningham, just go in and edit Wikipedia. And put any random stuff in there, and he'll say it on television.
He was ranting on about Thiago. I mean, look, where do you even start? Andy, you're going to have to help me out here. I mean, maybe he was watching a different game. He obviously was. But the lad looked like he'd been playing with us for 5 or 6 years. I mean, Kenny didn't say any of that. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's funny. He must have forgotten he was slating Fabinho only a matter of months ago.
And then called him class the other day.
Yeah, and now he's class. And Thiago is somehow third in line behind Henderson and Fabinho in that 6. Now, I don't know how you can say that. I don't know how you can possibly say that. I love Henderson, and I think he does a smashing job there. And Fabinho as well does a smashing job there. But Thiago is right up there. Time will tell who's boss in that position. But don't talk about Thiago, who's one of the best players in world football in that position. Ridiculous
the best
talk.
Available
Ridiculous
player,
talk. Yeah. Ridiculous talk. And again, he was slaughtering Fabinho in that position. He's contradicting himself.
Right.
No, it's probably not worth talking about. He's just another pundit looking for attention.
Yeah, as I said to you, and again, he's in the ABL category, so let's remember them. And they're not.
And he was
ABL.
A shy captain. Yeah.
So just ignore him. He'll go away soon enough. And you can just turn the television off. Right, next, Ray's gone.
He loves Ken Cunningham.
Yeah, Ray loves Kenny Cunningham. He's his cousin. Ray is his cousin.
Anthony Okango is definitely Liverpool forever. Yeah,
okay,
definitely, pal.
Only I can do that.
Hang on, please. I want to use this. I want to use this as a lead in to my topic, which is that it's around transfers, and everyone loves transfers. So it's a time to talk about transfers again. But my topic here. Do you want to talk about Mbappe? Do you? Well, actually, do you know, Andy? This is perfect because this is exactly what I want to talk about. Right? People hate talking about defensive transfers. Right? So all the conversation, we've signed Diogo Jota and we've signed Thiago, right? Thiago's probably the closest thing we've signed to a defender since Tsimikas, right? Of the Olympiacos fella, okay? So again, here we go. There's a big story today that Sarr has suddenly been agreed as well. So we're signing Sarr and we're signing Jota and we've signed Thiago, right? So I'm looking at it going, okay, the only thing this team needs at this moment in time is a centre-back. And nobody seems to care about the centre-back or even talk about it. And most of all the journos, Liverpool covering journos, are saying we are not signing another player. But it doesn't make a difference because all they're interested in is who is the next flashy forward that we're going to sign? So the conversation we have now, well, we've only got 2 centre-backs that can play. One of them is Billy Cometio, who's only 17, and the other is Van Dijk, right? Gomez and Fabinho are having a row over which paper bag is going to injure them next, right? So, literally... Yeah, Matip. Who did I say?
Fabinho.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Gomez and Matip are arguing over who gets injured next. But I look at it and I'm there going, right, so everyone wants to talk about Mbappe, Sarr. Who else was mentioned today? Somebody else. There was the young lad that's at Anderlecht, right? So all the conversation and talk is all about centre forwards and wingers after we've signed a fella, Diogo Jota, who was literally the flavour of the month for 24 hours until we moved on to the next forward signing.
Yeah.
So, Pete, why are people obsessed with only signing forwards?
I think, we're looking at the FIFA generation, and, people are... You look on social media, you wouldn't think defense matters. Oh, he can fill the gap there, and he can do this there, and he can do that there. So it's just about fantasy league points and all this. Who's gonna be the force to compete with Mo Salah and Sadio Mane. They don't think, okay, we also have to cover our bread and butter, because they'll be the first people also to complain when we throw out a couple of 16-year-olds at centre back and right back in the cup competitions. It's important. It is important to try and build something. I'd be in the camp of taking as you Phil describe it, a tier 2 or tier 3 centre half, and plug into what Klopp is good at, developing these types of players, bringing them through, and and making them leaders. It's not a sexy thing to go out and scout and buy and wait for a defender, but it needs to be done. Forget about Sarr. I think that Sarr nonsense is a 3-day-old story from an hour or two before we agreed terms with Jota. So I'd imagine France football have just woken up and decided to run with that story this afternoon for some reason. But I'd agree with you, Phil. It's because it's not sexy. It's not. The minute Mbappe made a statement, and he seems to be another one that loves a bit of attention, by the way, and likes to be in the news. I've given me notice kind of thing through my agents. Everyone's all over it. That's just, to be honest with you, I give up on speculating about Liverpool transfers, because I still think that Michael Edwards has his 3 and 4 windows ahead of where we are, and the rest of the clubs. You talked about panic earlier on, and you're spot on. The rest of the clubs look at who else was on our shortlist and who we bought as an alternative, and they flip to that alternative. So everybody literally is following Liverpool. So for me, forget about the sexy Sabutio FIFA signings, and let's see who's going to come in to maintain and develop that defense.
Andy, you were one of the greatest Lovren fans that ever existed. So, you must be you're clearly mourning the loss of Big Dejan over there in Russia, hitting in penalties and free kicks, and forgetting that he won games 100-0 with Liverpool. So, Andy, you're also top red. So, Andy, explain to me why we're only interested in talking about forwards when it comes to transfer talk.
I don't know. I think Pete's right. It's the FIFA generation. It's like people just demand fast things now. Like, it has to, talking about a defender is just not glamorous enough for a modern day football fan. I think Adrian Neely's dead right. I think next year, whether it's Ben White or somebody else, I think that's when maybe the centre back is bought. If you remember, Klopp was prepared to let Lovren go this time last year when the window was closing to Roma, and he wasn't going to replace him, because he does have a lot of faith in Fabinho playing that centre-back role. My opinion, before yesterday, look, I know he was quality against Bayern as well, but yesterday I just saw something different in Fabinho there, that I think he could play centre-back all season if he had to. You lose a lot of his qualities higher up the pitch, where he can win the ball and get an attack going, clip the ball over the top. But we saw many options in midfield now. I think he could wait till next year, till when Alon's contract is gone. Fabinho slots back into, midfield options, and then he goes for someone like Ben White. But I know that doesn't answer your question, Phil. But I just thought I'd say it anyway.
Cheers. Did you prepare the answer and just wanted to use it?
Yeah, I just mean notes here. Like, you didn't ask the question you were supposed to ask me.
It's like when you're doing an exam and it's like you answer just a completely different question because that's what the answer you had that you learned off.
That's what I studied.
put down everything you know on paper. You never know where you might pick up the marks. You know. Now, look, that's it for me. That's the answer. It's just people glamorize the forward players, but what we have there now is one of the best in world football. In the options up there, we've Mane, like he was so good yesterday, and Salah was so good the week before. You know what I mean? Bobby was decent again yesterday. The players are just so good up there, and I tell you, Jota's gonna fucking put pressure on Bobby, I think.
But look, we should be more excited about the prospect of signing defenders because let's face it, like we've signed Van Dijk, like the best defender in the league, and you know, not long before that we signed Robbo, and like these are integral players, and you know, for me, like Robbo, Trent, Van Dijk. I mean, these are players that you can really get behind and enjoy as much as some of the front players. Like, you know, they're such an integral part of the team. I mean, I think we've kind of. I honestly think in some ways I'm slightly concerned that maybe Klopp has decided that his kind of pecking order is, you know, Gomez is number 2 centre-back, Matip is number 3 centre-back, and Fabinho is number 4 centre-back. I don't have that much of a problem with Fabinho as being as number 4 centre-back. What I have a problem with is how injury-prone number 2 and number 3 are, and how often we're going to have to potentially deploy him, because yesterday showed us that he's more than capable of, you know, working alongside Van Dijk, and I'd be confident enough of us keeping clean sheets with Fabinho next to Van Dijk in the right situations. But like, we don't want to be deploying him there, you know, and taking away from what he can offer us in midfield more often than we need to be doing. And I get that we've got the depth there in midfield, but for me it's horses for courses, and if you haven't got number 2 and number 3 available, I don't know, playing a dangerous game.
Okay, so
Ray, do you not sorry Phil, do you not think, I just want to know what Ray thought, because a lot of people have glossed over it. I think letting whoever go is a huge mistake. I don't know how you feel about it. I think it was a huge mistake.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise that he didn't get more of an opportunity, and that he didn't sort of try and integrate him in a little bit more towards the back end of the season. But I'm always one who would err on the side of, well, we don't see what happens sort of day in, day out in training, and how well a player is kind of taken on board the instructions that the manager is trying to sort of give out. And I don't know, like, we'll see. I suppose in time we'll see. Whoever.
How do you pronounce it?
Henry
Smith.
His name is Henry.
I don't know. I was just being called him Hoover.
Henry. But like, for me, lads, I think it's the magpie syndrome. I think everyone just wants the flashy, shiny
new things,
right?
Yeah.
But the functional thing, like forwards win matches, but defenses win leagues. And we weren't able to win a league until we had a world-class goalkeeper and a world-class defense. And the thing that sets down, we can talk about Fabinho all day long. I said before the game, I've said it to you guys, I have no issue with Fabinho playing as centre-back, because the majority of the games we play are centre-backs that operate as midfielders anyway, because the teams we're playing against are just sitting in. And if you look at what Fat Frank did with Chelsea the weekend, they basically played as an away team. They sat in their own box. They never left their own half and just tried to play balls over the top to catch it. So that suits, because Fabinho can play there. If you bring in Thiago and you have Henderson or Wijnaldum or whatever it is, right? They're essentially playing with a defensive midfielder behind them, and then Van Dijk sweeps around him. Like, Van Dijk actually becomes almost like a Franz Beckenbauer and plays behind Fabinho, just pick up any balls that go behind him. It's like an emergence of a new formation. It's like a 1-1-2, 1-2-1-2 formation, right? When we have the ball, and then when we don't have the ball, it's like a 2-1-1-2-1-1 formation. in the attacking third, depending on the transitions that people use. But when you get down to it, all you need to do is look at what is the progressions here. What are the progressions here? If we're comfortable to go with Fabinho as the fourth choice centre-back, let's say, or backup centre-back when either Matip or Gomez is missing, then do we lose something when it comes to European matches when we need somebody to absolutely destroy teams in midfield? Or are we happy to say we're a much more constructive type of midfield in the way that other teams play, and that we're happy to rely on our centre-backs to step in and make those challenges when needs be? And I think that's where we're probably going with this type of thing, right? And Laura makes a good point. For times yesterday, Alisson was playing centre-back. That's because we were so high. Chelsea were scared to create space behind him, and what really did Chelsea in the head was the fact that we didn't need the space behind him. For the first time, I saw our team being able to just tear through teams that were really that are talented and set up to do what they want. And when they lost a player, they just tucked in. I know they got the penalty. We're talking about the Allisson save. About time he saved the penalty. I think he'd faced 400 penalties since he signed for the club and hadn't saved a single one. And I think, to be fair to him, and I think the credit to Achterberg, because he is good at the out coaching when it comes to stopping the penalties. He just told him, don't move. This Muppet's going to do a little jump in the air, right? Don't move. The jump is designed to make you go into your dive. Don't move. And when he comes down, he's lost his pace, so he can't get a powerful shot away. So his whole choice at that stage is to open his body up and try go across him. And like, I don't get that jump.
I honestly, I don't get it either. I think keepers need to start staying in the middle
on that line, waiting.
Because it's so many penalties go down the middle nowadays. Because I just think there's so much at stake. Players bottle it and stick it down the middle. Because they can't miss. There's only so many players that stick a ball very tight into a corner, so a keeper can't still reach almost into the corner. Phil, the expert in goalkeepers, proclaimed by someone one time. What do you think?
I think with what he did by staying, if you look at when your man does his jump and comes down to hit it, right, he hasn't moved. Most times, if you look at the penalty, you can see it the previous week, he'd already gone. Before the player had struck, he was going. He was going where he thought the ball was going to be. I think he was told by Achterberg, stay up, because I think a lot of Jorginho's penalties go down the middle, right? And that straight away, as long as he doesn't move, right, it suddenly puts doubt in Jorginho's mind, and he can't, because of that stupid jump, he can't change how he's going to strike a ball. Like, he literally can't change how he's going to strike the ball. So he has one option, and that's to play it along to Alisson's left hand side, because he was coming at it right footed. And that was the end of it. Muppets. So I'm delighted that Alisson saved. But the biggest bit for me was, and John mentioned it wasn't somebody said. Alisson said he'd lost lost confidence after the Charity Shield. And that to me is huge for him, because he looked like, and to be fair, Carragher had mentioned as well, he was conceding goals at the rate that we hadn't seen since Mignolet had been in goal for us. Like, he was like letting goals in every 2 shots he faced. Like, he was letting one in for every, and that's not something that Alisson has done since he's been at the club. So it's great to see it. Delighted to see him make the save, and hopefully he kicks on and he's back into his experience form and making lots of saves.
We're just enjoying being insulted here by half the internet.
All this money goes into Gav Doyle's back pocket.
Like, the lads are getting excited because the SAR rumor is picking up steam now. Like, if that happens, it's mental. But like,
it is mental, yeah.
Because what's happening? Does that mean somebody's gone? Maybe
Sadio Mane, because he's so similar to him. I mean, maybe, I don't know about you. Does Sadio Mane look grumpy lately? Does he look like somebody? Does his body language?
Don't you start winding up the internet again? Fuck you.
No.
You had your phone.
To be fair to Pete, there's lots of the lads on here who are talking about Grizz saying that he's now forward. Like I hate to break it to you, but Grizz has no information, right? So Pete said 6 weeks ago, right, that Fabinho was likely to be 4th choice centre back this year when it happens, and he was a better centre back than Gomez. And what the lads don't realise is that this conversation went on beforehand. They forgot it all because of all the names that were thrown out, magic names with the magic beans, and then all of a sudden he comes on and rehashes somebody else's point, and that's his point all of a sudden, right? So anyhow, the way it is
Hi, Grizz.
Pete called Fabinho first as being fourth choice centre back, and he should be applauded and acclaimed as the greatest ever ITK in the LFC scene. So well done, Pete.
No. I love a player. Love a player like that. I just like a player like him at the back.
I know, and to be fair, Rajiv says there, unpopular opinion, Grizz gets his information from the local chippies. Grizz is the person I was referring to earlier on about eating oxtail soup and chips. That's all I'm saying. That's where he gets his information from his soupy chips. Right, what do we got? What was next on it? So we were not boys, sir. That's great. Thanks,
Steve Nicol. Steve Nicol is a grumpy bastard, by the way. I mean, I loved him as a player as when I was a kid, but he is the grumpiest. How is he on television? He's ugly for starters. He hates everyone, not just Liverpool. He hates everyone. Doesn't like anything. And he's sitting there like that, like the world owes him something. He's probably on a fair few quid from the Americans. Steve Nicol. It's incredible. Incredible. He's the grumpiest bastard on television.
To be fair, he played in the same team as Mark Lawrenson, and look how happy Mark Lawrenson was ever at watching football match.
Doom and gloom. It's all doom and gloom. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, lots of people.
I remember Steve Nicol had his name on his car years ago.
What was it? Seriously? One of those XR3Is, I think.
He had it was a red one of those, and I had Steve. Literally had Steve Nicol, Liverpool FC written on the side of the car.
Yeah, they all did though. Ronnie Whelan was the same. That was the gig back then. They got sponsored by the local Ford dealer or whatever, and all the names were on the sides of the car. That's how it worked.
Lads wouldn't be caught dead today in a Ford.
The only person that has a car dealership contract these days is Colo Torre, as we all know.
That's a real Brendan Rodgers thing to do nowadays, isn't it? Do you remember he had that black Porsche? Boy, you could just imagine Brendan Rodgers written in big bold right on the back window.
Brendan Rodgers who?
Instead of Porsche, Andy, he's taken the Porsche off and just has Rodgers in the right, like Porsche.
Character.
Roger Turbo.
Yeah, instead of Carragher, character.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Right, lads, last topic. It's Ray's topic. Ray, make sure I get this right. But leading on from the match, because it all comes into it as well. The VAR, everyone is confused about the handball rule, the something else rule, what's going on with VAR. People are still talking about VAR. Personally, I've got an opinion, and I always have this opinion with VAR. I like it. And I like this new television on the side, and the lads looking at the television on the side. But go on, give us your take on the VAR.
No, I think it's actually something that Andy touched on last season quite a bit, and that was we're now into kind of phase 2 really of VAR. They got a lot of things wrong with it last season. Seemed reluctant to let the ref go over and sort of make his final decision on things if it's something that he maybe missed in live play, and we've seen that in the Liverpool game at the weekend. I also quite like this new kind of phenomenon of the linesman kind of keeping the flag down and letting the play. That phase of play out, and if there's a goal scored, then they put the flag up and it can be looked at on VAR. I think the tweaks that they've made is definitely, like, the one thing that would have been absolutely ridiculous is if they just kept doing the same things this season like they were doing last season and making stupid mistakes. But I think this next kind of this phase 2 of VAR has definitely been an improvement so far. As far as this new handball rule, that seems to change every 5 minutes. They just need to make their minds up. That's something that needs to stay consistent, because there's going to be so many penalties this season for handballs. Like, the 2 handballs given over the weekend were when players didn't really have a clue. Now, the first one was hilarious because it was Man United, and we all, we all buzzed off it big time. And then
the retake was better.
Oh yeah, the chain of events then, like pure Gary Neville meltdown moment there live on Sky. It was brilliant. But it took me back to the days where Suarez went through a little phase of trying to deliberately put the ball up towards the defender's hands and then appeal and get the penalty. Like he was doing it. He got about 3 in about 5 games. So we're going to see absolutely loads of penalties, I think, if that stays the way it is.
Well, that's the thing, Ray. As you say, we're in phase 2 of VAR, so any rule changes should be in line with VAR and what VAR enables the game to do. So rather than make rule changes to suit the uncertainty, make the rule changes that it can be reviewed and you can tell with a replay. That handball rule it's not in line with VAR. You know what I mean? You look at those and you can easily tell whether that was intentional or not. You can see both of those handballs were not intentional. Why make it that if it hits the ball just outside your silhouette that it's black and white? I mean, you're going to have more and more players with their hands behind their back, and that's not how a defender should have to defend. It's fucking ridiculous. If hands are in a natural position and it's accidental, that shouldn't be a penalty. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant to watch the Manx meltdown over it. But that's going to happen to us, and it's going to happen in an important game.
It is.
They got 23 penalties last year. I have no sympathy for them.
Yeah. Pete, the only thing I'll say, right, on the penalty, on the handball stuff, the bit that I think is mental is that they've sort of said now from here up is the armpit, right? So now you have to define where somebody's arm. Now, if you've got small arms like Jordan Pickford, your armpit's going to be a lot smaller, right? So it's not like, and then if you have jerseys that have long sleeves, it's going to look like your armpits go for a longer time. And then if you've got short sleeves, that's where the confusion goes, right? So that to me is interesting. But the bit that I thought was unfair was the fact that De Gea moved. That, to me, the only question mark I have is this idea, this rule on the goalkeepers, right? If it's a fractional movement as he goes to make the save, the natural movement in a goalkeeper when he dives is he starts off on his front leg, which is to go forward
to get the spring. What are you supposed to do? You know.
Right, I think that's madness, but I do get if you leave your line and then make the save. Like there's a great video on YouTube of there's a mad penalty set where the goalkeeper just basically ran straight off his line, run straight off his
Jersey
line. Yeah. So like, I don't care about intentional and unintentional. Like if you want to go back far, the first time they tried this type of rule was in the Champions League final against Tottenham when Mane plays the ball against the hand off whatever his name was off Spurs, and we got the penalty. But whatever, I don't know any of the sports players. Don't care about them.
Nondescript. Someone in
like Spurs regen player, right? So it's just like anyway. So that's it. So they're trying to refine that rule, and I've no issue with it. The only bit that I have is, again, it's not about the VAR piece. I think VAR is great, right? I think it's brilliant. It's improved the game no end. It's gotten rid of stupid decisions and really bad, wrong decisions, right? Anyone that wants it, like Janice wanted it back once, would rather have the linemen put the flags up even when they're wrong.
Exactly. That's absolutely nonsensical. I mean, for an ex-player to say something like that is just just baffles me.
Well, Janice was injury prone, so he probably thinking of himself, I need another break. You know, Jesus, I think that fella watched more football than he ever played, for fuck's sake.
For me anyway, the offside rule, when you see it forced, is a bit confusing. But if they keep this and they keep the consistency right, then everyone is just going to play, and they're going to play to the end of the piece. If the ball goes in the net, they check it for offside. If it's offside, fine, right? And if it's not, then it's a goal, and that's the right decision. Like, what's wrong with this here? If it's the right decision, it's the right decision.
Exactly. The other aspect of this as well, like that I like, is we've got away from that initial reluctance of referees to overrule their original decision. So like yesterday, he brings the yellow card out, and he obviously, someone has a word in his ear and says, I think you need to go and have a look at that. It's looking like a red to me. Do you want to go over and have a quick look again yourself? He goes over and he's prepared to change his original decision and admit that he was wrong in the first place.
But Ray, if you're given a foul there, how are you not giving it a red card? This is what I'm saying to you. For me, that's you're checking if it's an accidental collision or not. He's actually booked the player, for being on his last man. He's made a huge referee error.
I presume if he's looking at it from behind the play and then he looks at it again from a different angle, he realises that actually his initial judgment was bang off. So he realizes from the different angle that the replay gives him that actually, this is ridiculous.
Lads, the
I've
thing
made
here,
he said, I've made a ricket, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
Pete, the thing here is that the rule is if it's denying a clear goal scoring opportunity, right? So the reason he gave the yellow card is he believed the ball was already too far ahead of Mane because Kepa was coming out to clear the ball, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when
Based
he
on the
looked,
other 4 times that he tried to come out and get the ball and failed. It's incredible.
I think if he reflects on that, he'll say, I shouldn't have took out the yellow card. I should have waited till I seen it. It's a foul all day long, right? Yeah. He knows that. Then go and review it and decide what card is going to be dished out. And I mean, that's the beauty of VAR.
yeah. And look, people don't like it, but the people that don't like it are the ones who are basically just against everything. So they hate everything.
The
They're
ABLs,
they're against all the signings. They pretend for one day that they like all the signings and they like the players. It's about 24 hours before the season kicks off.
Corbally red.
They'll spend the rest of the season moaning about all the signings and everyone that's there, right? So, as I said, I'm a huge fan of VAR. Long may it continue, because all they're going to do is they're going to refine it, and it's just going to become seamless, and it's just going to be how they refine the rules. Yeah, they refine the rules, and they bring in more technology, and it just gets better and better, and it just takes out mistakes. And all it lays back to then is that all it comes back to is football is a game of mistakes by two teams. Because that's how goal scorers, not by the officials. You don't mistakes by the officials. Players we accept, officials you don't accept.
And you know the other thing that everyone was banging on about last season? It's not fair on the crowd. The crowd don't know what's going on. Well, guess what? There's no crowd, so it's all good.
What about this fake noise? The fake noise doesn't know what it's going on at the best of times.
No, there's another one there tonight. There was another one when Wolves, someone, I don't know, it was Neto or somemeone like that.
He could be forgiven for that one.
He hit one off the stanchion, didn't he?
Yeah, he could be forgiven for that one. Now, I think it's a good opportunity to bring in the watching the screen part, because I think walking over with the crowd there at a home game for a team that has a decision going for or against them can be quite intimidating for the ref and the ref to make the right call. But now we can go over there and make it kind of a more informed judgment without the influence. And as well, how quiet it is in the stadiums. You can hear the players, what they're saying to the refs as well. So it's going to show up a lot of players that are kind of saying VAR or whatever. It'll be a good thing for VAR going forward without the crowds.
Well, look, for me anyway, having watched the NFL at the weekend and seen stadiums where crowds are back, the difference between the fake noise and the real noise is off the charts, right? Like, I think Dallas had 156,000 people in their stadium at the weekend because they don't really care. In an indoor dome, like I'm still baffled at this. I can understand getting fans back into outdoor stadiums, but this is an indoor dome and they're all in there. And like, there was about 6 of them with masks on it. I think there was 35,000 or something that's in there, right? And you hear the sound of a real crowd, and it's so different because the sound is so natural. Like, there's this constant sound that goes on in these fake crowd sounds, right? That doesn't exist in matches. Like, how many times do you watch the match? And there's always these quiet spells where the crowd basically says nothing, and then it comes alive to something that's there. This is just like, we take FIFA, plug in a bit, away it goes. So from what, like, the plans that were coming out today, according to James Pearce, is that they want to get 12 or 13,000 back into Anfield for the Sheffield United game in October. And you've got to ask yourself, is that even going to be possible? Because if Liverpool and the rest of England go into lockdown, which is more likely than getting crowds back into stands, like, you've got to ask yourself, will crowds even be back into stadiums this year? Not with the way that this coronavirus is exploding across Europe. There's a bigger chance that leagues will be cancelled again, or not cancelled, but suspended, than there is of fans getting back into stadiums at this point.
I said it out, like, just after the outbreak. I said, you mightn't be back in Anfield for a year. And I'm not trying to say I was right, but this whole thing is a fucking mess. And unless they change their whole approach and their whole strategy towards how they're going to deal with it, fans won't be back in this side of Christmas. They just won't. It's as simple as that. They won't, because lockdowns are more likely than progress at the moment. Coming into the winter, people getting bugs, people getting tested for a sore fucking arse. You know what I mean? Seriously,
Like, lads, England's bollocks, right? Of all the countries in Europe, England is absolutely bollocks, right? They've no tests left. They have nobody even to test them. The rest of Europe, they're asking, will you please test us? And the rest of Europe saying, Brexit, lads, best of luck. You're on your own to get that sorted out, right? Whatever chance, like they're talking about there's fans going back into games in Germany. Germany have one of the best rates of detection and management of this virus across Europe. That's how they're able to put fans back in the ground, and they're experimental with ways of getting teams back in. And they're a much more organised and structured society. I think their infection rate's something like 20 per 100,000 at the moment, in comparison to England's, which is 70 and growing. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we're talking about: 70 and growing. Like,
and I think Liverpool and quite a few of the clubs in the north are probably going to be at the back of the queue as far as fans getting into grounds. We in Liverpool we're going back into restrictions, and I just don't see it. It's definitely not going to happen in October, and I don't think there'll be, unlike America, I don't think there'll be this kind of let's just push on regardless approach. I just don't think the government there really would be pushing fans into football stadiums. It does nothing for them. It gives them no political capital whatsoever. It's a very different kind of link between pushing on with American football and what that the signal that sends out to the American people in kind of Trump land. So no, I think if we see, and by the way, I think the club did a very, I think they were very, got to commend them for the fact that they've essentially suspended kind of season tickets for this season, and they're just kind of taking a wait and see approach, whereas a lot of other clubs have made season ticket holders kind of stump up some cash to retain that status of being members or season ticket holders. So I think what the club have done here is been sensible and said, look, if matches can be attended, then we'll sell tickets at that time. But let's not stress about renewing season tickets or older fans who are season ticket holders who might be weary of going back into that kind of environment. I think we've just got to accept that if we get to a game this season, it'd be an absolute bonus.
Ray, what do you think of the talk if they do allow fans back in and tickets are going to be distributed onto people's phones and they're not transferable? What do you think? Do you think that might be FSG's opportunity to normalise this idea of tickets not changing hands?
Yeah, I think it's an ideal opportunity for them to try and break the status quo, because it's hard to object to moving onto that kind of technology platform in the circumstances. So if you link that to the current kind of clean down of the season ticket fans and everyone having to verify their identities, and given this kind of amnesty to some fans who've been attending games on someone else's season ticket for years, I think when you combine the two things, I think this, from sort of let's say next season onwards, it's definitely the opportunity to move it into a different level, as to where break that chain that's been there, and the club have been trying to come up with the secret formula for years, and it's not really being out there, and I think this is the opportunity for them to maybe get beyond some of the objections that have consistently been thrown out there.
Right, there might be something for us to talk about next week, because
how
technology could impact ticketing, or even creating ticketing exchanges for season ticket holders if they want friends and family to go to matches, how that can happen as opposed to selling tickets. Right, lads, we are now just about we've got 60 seconds to go, so I'm just going to bring you a few headlines from around the Tripperland, and the first headline is that Andy's going to wear a red top next week. Gav will appear in at some point. Gav and Keith will be on across the course of the week doing all the stuff around transfers, and there's a new show on Wednesday night as well. Pete will be back next week. We have us back doing the forum. We have all the stuff that goes up. We've got matches on the Thursday, and there's all other type of stuff that's going on as well. For all those you who like the Nike kit, there's something wrong with us. And that's about it. So this has been the forum. That has been your forumtologists. Andy Young, Ray Dicko Dickinson. Bring my finger
Evening.
back there. And then, of course, we've got Pete in Barcelona. Pete was the first into lockdown back in March. They haven't come out of lockdown. He's still in lockdown at the moment. Liverpool's about to go into lockdown tonight. Dublin is at level 3. The rest of Ireland's about to go into level 3 as well. There's all sorts of levels that's going on. But just remember, stay safe. We'll see us all next week. Good night. God bless.